Alright, what is up guys? It's RAWICE511. I know it's been a little while, but I'm here today with something that I think is pretty exciting. I hinted at this on my Instagram a few weeks ago, and I had a lot of good responses on there. So pretty much what this video is a complete how-to guide on how to assemble my dual action OTF hidden blade if you buy the files. Yep, that is correct. I am selling the files now. A lot of you guys had asked for that. I'm doing this for the main reason that I simply cannot keep up with the physical sales of the hidden blades. As of right now, I have over 1,500 messages just on my Etsy page alone, and that is only from the past 30 days. So as you can imagine, I just can't keep up. So if you have noticed the store has been a little bit dry, that's mainly been because of that reason. But another huge issue has been that I received a bunch of plastic from my supplier for making the hidden blades, and the quality was just not what I wanted. The old ones they gave me were great, which was ones that I sold, but the new batch I received just had these weird issues, like the parts would just like warp randomly, even if they weren't in the heat or anything like that. Like I had a blade that was in the shade on my desk, and like I came in one day and it was just like warped completely, and I was like, how did this happen? So I definitely did not feel comfortable sending you guys any hidden blades that could have that problem, so I just didn't do it, and that's why I haven't restocked in so long, because the supplier won't refund me or replace those rolls. They did initially send me 2 replacement filament rolls, but those were dodgy as well, and basically now they're just blaming me for it. So yeah, there's nothing I can really do at this point. So the next best thing I could do was to actually sell the files to you guys. So I have done this. This is my OTF hidden blade that I originally put up on my channel. The one from the hybrid video, same thing. The ones that I've been selling on my Etsy, this is those exact files. Now, I'm just going to quickly go over the reason why I went with the price that I did. And didn't do it A, a little bit cheaper, or B, a little bit more expensive, because I know a lot of you were on the poll were asking me to charge more than this. Some of you were saying to charge less, but the overwhelming majority said around $100, and I'm assuming that's American because a lot of my followers are in America, so even in Australian this is actually a little bit cheaper, because I think it works out at around $77 US for you Americans, whereas it's $100 for us in Australia. And I think that's pretty good value, and I'm going to tell you why real quick, and then we'll jump in how you actually build this thing once you buy the files. So this is my most up-to-date hidden blade. This is even more up-to-date than the ones I was selling on my Etsy. The reason why is this is the Mark 11 single and hybrid blade, whereas the ones on my Etsy were the Mark 10s. The main difference is just how easy these are to put together, especially for someone who's not experienced with this kind of thing. So the Mark 11 basically has marked components. What that means is on the kickers, the front one is marked with an F for front, the back one is marked with a B for back. The slider has an arrow on it that faces the front so that you always get the parts in the right spot, which I think is really, really important for people, especially if you've never built one of these before. It can be a real big headache, and I've even been on Skype calls with some of you guys that didn't really get the orientations of the parts correct when you tried to repair your hidden blade that you bought from Etsy. So pretty much the parts take out the guessing work because they're actually labeled, so you know exactly where everything goes. So in terms of that, I haven't seen any other OTF hidden blade have that feature. So that is why, one of the reasons why I went with the price that I did. The other reason is you get 2 models for the price of 1. As you can see, you get both the single blade and the hybrid blade. So you get both of them for the price of 1, which is really awesome. So whichever one you prefer, you can go ahead and print that one and put that into your hidden blade, and you will have that model, which I think is really good value. The other reason is obviously I've spent over 6 years on and off working on this design to get it to the point where it is. And I can honestly say that I think this is the best working, most efficient OTF style hidden blade out there. I've looked on, Thingiverse and a few other websites at other files of hidden blades, and I cannot find anyone that works as well as mine. or anyone that sells theirs that works as well as mine. You just can't find files of this quality out there. I think the closest one I saw didn't even have screw holes to put it together. So I definitely think, mine is superior in that sense, which is another huge reason. Another reason the price is what it is you also get to have all of the ring sizes. So I've actually put every size ring that I've created from size, I think 8 or 7, right through to size 13. So no matter what size your fingers are, you can essentially wear this hidden blade and it's going to fit you really nicely. So that's another huge reason. But yeah, those are the main reasons I went with the price I did. Another big thing to notice as well is that this website copyrights all your files. That was one of the main things I was worried about with someone buying this and then going on and selling it themselves. But the good thing with Cults is they actually copyright everything that is uploaded to the website. As you can see here, it is under copyright protection. So obviously no one can go ahead and try to steal the design or sell it themselves. And with that comes a commission price for them where they take 20% of your earnings. So I don't actually get the full 100. They do take 20% of that. So that's why I went with the price I did. I hope that's okay with you guys. I've put a really good in-depth video on how to put this together. So I hope this makes it as easy as possible for you. And yeah, let's jump right into it. Won't delay you guys any longer. Hope you enjoy, and I will talk to you at the end of the video. All right, see you guys. Okay, I just want to cover a few files very specifically on how to print them and the appropriate orientation of the part on the print bed, sorry. So pretty much there is an optimal way to do these pieces. I have right here the front kicker. So this part is what slings the blade back in. So when you orientate this on your print bed, I would recommend you put it face down. So you can see here is the F, which stands for front. You don't need any sport material for that, so don't worry about it. I would recommend rotating that so that it is face down like so. And then we can go ahead and move this onto the platform. So you can see now the face here is face down on the print bed. Now you're obviously like, why is this bit floating here? So all you want to do is go auto supports, and for these supports I'm using the linear option here. Your slice might be different, but I found these type work better. This is the most ideal way to print this part, I guarantee it. I've tried every other orientation because you don't want this part to be held up by support material because you want that to be as strong as possible, and you don't want this to be on its side. So I'll go ahead and clear these. I'm going to rotate this this direction. So you're obviously thinking, oh, why don't you print it this way? You don't want this bit hovering all with support material, and you don't want that bit hovering. And also the way the force comes when it is slinging the blade back in, it is weaker when the lines are in that direction. It's more likely to break. Whereas if you lie it flat like we had before, like so, then it is like one solid piece essentially, and there's no weaknesses in between the layer lines. So that's how I'd recommend printing this one. Also, when printing the kickers, obviously the back one would be exactly the same as this. When printing these, definitely do 100% infill. The same goes for the lock tabs, which I will show you now. So for the front lock tabs, obviously the orientation that's best for these is this one. Obviously same goes for the back one too, so put it flat side down. You don't need any support material for these, and this will print just fine like that. And make sure you do 100% infill for these, both the front and back lock tab. You definitely are going to need it because you want these to be as strong as possible. Also, go a little bit slower on the print speed on this one, and maybe reduce the layer height, because if you can get this way more accurate with, like, a better resolution and a smaller layer height, it will be a lot better for the mechanism, because the part will be more dimensionally accurate to the file, so it will essentially fit better into the whole mechanism. So 100% infill, go on a higher resolution, and make sure it's nice and flat on the print bed with that side down. Same goes for the back one too. As for the top case, I know some of you will be a little bit confused because on it we have the model number that's kind of embossed into the design, and some of you will be like, oh, what way do I print this, because that's floating, and then in this way we have this block here. Do it this side up, okay? Don't worry about the writing. As in all of my hidden blades, I have never printed this text with support material. It prints just fine without support material. As long as the temperature of your extruder head is fine, it should have no problem bridging that surface in there. Just make sure that it is that orientation. Make sure that this block part is facing upwards off the print bed, and you should be good to go. As for infill on this one, doesn't really matter. I think I go about 20% usually, and just a standard resolution should be fine. Now, the slider I'm about to show you in the video was the previous design, the one without the arrow that only goes halfway through. So the file you actually get is this one here that you can see, and on it the arrow is only embossed in about a mil or half a mil, as you can see just right there. And I had to rotate this around. Now I would recommend obviously printing it this way with the arrow on the top. So we'll go ahead and move that onto the platform. The one I showed in the video has the arrow that cuts all the way through the whole slider, but that is not the file you'll get. This is the file that you will get, since it shows you the correct way. I'm just going to put this in green, might be a little bit easier for you guys to see. So yeah, you can kind of see the arrow right there. That is the correct way to put it, okay? Alright, and that is all the parts that I think I need to clarify on how to print. So now we can get onto the actual assembly process.
Alright, so once you have printed off all of your parts, you are going to want to make sure that you actually have everything to begin with. So off the bat, we should have the top case, which obviously will have the model on it. So it should be version 1, Mark 11, which is what the newest one is. So you're actually getting the newest files. I haven't even sold one of these new ones yet. So you're actually getting the files. Everyone that bought a hidden blade before was the Mark 10. This is the Mark 11. You should have your base piece. You should have your blade. Now obviously if you printed a single blade, it will look like this. If you have printed the hybrid blade, it will look like that. Now obviously it doesn't matter which one you go with, but it's up to you. Then you should have your wheel case. This is called the wheel case. There we go. Should have your slider. Now obviously the Mark 11 has the arrow on it, and that tells you which way to point it. Then we should have your two kickers, one being the front. As you can see, it has a F on it. I don't know if that'll focus. And one being the back, which has a B on it. You probably can't really see from there. You can see the B on there. So that's the back one. Then you should have your front kicker, which is the shorter one. And you should have your back kicker, which is the longer one. And then obviously we have a ring. So I've given you all the ring sizes from size maybe 7 or 8 right through to 13 or 14, I think. So you should be able to print one that fits your hand no matter how big your fingers are. So that's another reason for the price as well. Then we have two components to the wheel. We have the bottom piece here, which has these like 2 little pins sticking out of it. And then we have the top one there, which has the holes in the top. Then there is a tiny little piece that you need, which is called the wheel lock. Looks like this. Really, really small. So don't lose this one. Has a little hole in the back like that. Really tiny. Okay. And if you're wondering, the one I actually printed, the wheel case I printed, it lifted off the print bed a little bit. As you can see there, it curves up. So I'm using one that I printed a while ago instead, just so that we don't have that issue. So definitely make sure your prints are stuck down properly onto the print bed so you don't get any lifting issues. One part I forgot to mention that you also need to make sure you have is the design logo piece. This is what goes on top of the hidden blade, on top of the wheel here, and gives it that really cool look. This is also my logo, so make sure you have this piece printed as well. Alright, next we're going to talk about the tools that you will need and the other parts that you can't 3D print. Alright, as for the tools, probably the most important one you're going to need is a piece of sandpaper. Now I'm going with 360 grit. I would recommend you get a grit like this, or even maybe a little bit finer if anything. The reason why I went with such a fine grit is because it's going to make it hard for us to take off too much material. The absolute last thing you want to do is sand too much, take off too much material, and then you can't use the part and you have to print another one again. So if you go with a finer grit, that means you can sand it and then still have, you know, a bit of room to play around with if you need to sand it a little bit more. So go with a 360 grit, it's probably a safe option. This is a wet and dry sandpaper as well, which is a little bit better for plastics, I found anyway. Next tool you're going to need is a scalpel or a razor blade. This is probably one of the most important ones, I reckon. So go with this, and you'll need that to just clean up like little blobs and bits on your prints. Now obviously this is all dependent on how clean your prints come out. As you can see, mine come out extremely really well. Like, I've found the sweet spot with my printer. So if your prints come out really clean, it's going to have minimal work needed to be done to it. I've had ones that I've actually printed everything and not one single part had any roughage on it, and I was able to actually just put it together straight away. And I've designed the files to make this as easy to put together as possible, so you guys are going to have minimal issues. Alright, so the next thing, this is not necessary, this is optional, but it does make keeping everything flat nice and easy. It's a little file. I don't know what you call this, like a micro file or something like that, but just lets you file little rough bits that you need to get to and keep it nice and flat. Obviously, super glue is a must, very, very important. Next up, we have Badminton string, arguably one of the more important things as well. Now this Badminton string, as you can see up here, this is the dimension. So it's 0.7 millimeter Badminton string, so this is what you use for your badminton racket. This one is quite elastic. I would not recommend getting a really elastic one because when you pull the string, it stretches out and it makes it hard to get like an accurate distance of like where you want the ring positioned because it will stretch. So try not to go too elastic with your badminton string. Get one that's a little bit stiffer. This one's quite elastic, but I can make it work. Alright, and the final things you will need are some screws to put it together. Now, these are M3 by 10 millimeters. You can use all 6 of the screws as 10 millimeter screws. So basically the 10 mil is for the back part, but it will fit the front as well. If you wanted to be really, really picky, you could go like a 12 or a 15, put it in the front, but 10 is fine. Save yourself some money. Just go all 10s, put them through there. And the final thing is some 4 millimeter set screws or grub screws. So basically what these are is tiny little screws like that. You should be able to find these on eBay or Amazon, or you can go to hobby stores and they always have these. They're pretty cheap, they're really small, and you insert a hex key into the end and you can tighten them. There is no actual like head to it, which is why we need them, because we need like a pin. So these work perfectly. Now if you can't find any of these where you're from and it's giving you a bit of hassle, then I would recommend going and getting one of your 10mm M3 screws. And what you can do with a hacksaw or a Dremel is cut off the tip, the mushroom part, and leave a 4mm piece of the threaded rod. And then all you need to do is, you know, grab it with a pair of pliers and then thread it in with the pliers, okay? So it's not necessary if you have these, but it definitely makes it a lot easier. Alright, so that is literally all the tools you need. The last two things, oh, there is actually one more thing as well, is you need size 8 rubber band. So this is a size 8 rubber band. You're going to need just one of these, but obviously you'll probably buy them in a pack. And then you will need one number 14 rubber band, or size 14, I'm assuming, rubber band. There's the dimensions there. So one of these, one of the size 10, size 8 rubber band, sorry. And the final thing, this is probably going to be the hardest one for you guys to find, is a small spring. So this is the spring that I use, and this is for the wheel lock. I will go ahead and link where I got this in the description. They're really small little springs. If you can't find these, what I would recommend you do is, if you have a clicky pen with a button on the end, if you unscrew the tip, there should be a spring where the ink cartridge is, down the bottom where the tip is, and that should be roughly the same size. If it's not the same size, you can always just stretch it out a little bit and put it in as well. Another thing you guys also can use, it's not 100% necessary, like you don't need this, is these little wire crimps. So they're little aluminium wire crimps. They look like this. I can just focus that. So you can see they're really small. I will link these in the description, so if you do want to buy some, you can. But basically they make it a lot easier to string the wheel mechanism to put this together. So instead of tying knots, you can use these. Again, these are optional, you don't need them, you can just tie a knot. But if you do happen to have some, or you want to go grab some, they do make it a lot easier to build your hidden blade. Just some other tools you might want to have on hand is some pliers and one of these little hex screws. That's mainly for if you're going to use these grub screws here that I mentioned before, and also if you are going to use these wire crimps because you want to be able to squish them. So make sure you have those too if you're going to use those grubs and crimps. And lastly, some lubricant is probably a good idea. This is an oil-based one. It's very thin and runny and it lasts really, really well. So if you want some lubricant, make sure you get a nice runny one that's not too thick and greasy. And a pair of scissors is always a good idea to have just to cut the string. Just to make it easier on yourself, if you have a clamp, this can help when we're waiting for the glue to set, we can just clamp it. So if you have a little clamp, or even like one of these paper binders, they work as well, so yeah. But yeah, that is all the tools that we're going to need. Now we're going to get on to actually putting it together and assembling the whole thing. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is go ahead and clean up any pieces that have, you know, bumps on them, any support material, anything like that. So just go ahead and have a really good look at your parts. Now, if you don't have an IDEX printer like me, chances are you're going to have a nipple on this piece here. This is really, really important because if there is, you need to cut this off. So, what I mean by nipple is you can see on this one here, there is a little bit, and that's just from where the printer finishes printing. There leaves that little piece there. So, you want to go ahead and cut that bit off. For mine, I printed a few at the same time, so this one doesn't have it. Alright. Next, on the base piece, what you really want to just look at is see if there's any stringing between the parts, because this can obviously affect the blade as it slides in and out. For me, it looks really, really good. I don't really have any stringing on this part. However, I notice a tiny little nipple bit on the inside here. If you can just see right there. You can see it. If I just focus this, you can see there's a little piece here. I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. You need to be very careful with this. You want to make sure everything is smooth as butter. It'll just make everything run a lot better as well. So then what you want to do is test fit your blade into the base. So you can see mine, it stops a little bit there. You can see that should slide all the way in, but it doesn't. Which means the blade is probably a little bit rough on edges. So if we have a look, you can see there is a few bumps on here, a few bumps on the other side. So what I'm going to do is just grab my sandpaper over here and just run that a few times. Remember, you don't want to take off too much material. Alright, go ahead and try again. Now you can see how smooth that is. It should sound exactly like that. Perfect. Alright, so that's that done. Next up, we're going to have a look at the wheel case. You can see mine has a lot of stringing on the inside, which means where the extruder travels across, it leaves strings. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these. Pretty easy to take off. Just use your scalpel, your Exacto blade. Just run it along the edges, and then they should just come off really easily. Alright, you can see that's a lot better, a lot smoother looking, not as many strings. Perfect. Now we're going to have a look at the slider. Now the main thing I've noticed with the slider is there can be a rim on this bit, which can stop the lock tabs from sliding along the edge properly, because they kind of bite into that little lip that can form here. So I want to go ahead and sand this as well. Just going to give it a few on the edge. Like that, and then we're just going to run our sandpaper on the actual piece here. Alright, now to test and make sure this works, want to grab your base piece here, and I'll take the blade out for now. Grab your base, we're going to put the slider in. And how to know if it works well, it should slide perfectly like that. See how, if you were here right now, you could feel there is basically no friction. That's how you know you've got it perfect. So that's all good. Alright, now probably the next most important ones would be the kickers. Now the way I recommend printing these on your printer is to have them face down like this. So if you look on them, there is a focus this. You can see the letter, which tells you it's the front one. I print them face down on the print bed like that and like that. Okay, so that lets you make sure that the piece that the blade latches onto is as strong as possible. Always print the kickers and the lock tabs in 100% infill so that they're just solid pieces of plastic. Don't do anything less than that because they will probably break. These take a lot of stress during the mechanism action, so 100% infill all the time. You can see I've already taken the support material off of this one here. You can see it's completely cleaned off. So this one here still has the support material. As you can see, right there. Yep, you can see the support material on there, so we need to remove this. So you just grab it, peel it off, and make sure that surface there on the top is nice and smooth. Okay, so what we're going to do with these is just take them again over to the sandpaper, put it on like an edge like this, and then we're just going to sand them away like so. You pretty much just want to make sure the top of this is nice and flat and smooth so that it doesn't catch on the slider at all. Like so. Do the same with the other one. Alright, perfect. So, the way we check if these are good to go is we take the one with the F for front, we put it in towards the front of the mechanism. This is where the blade comes out. Put it into its channel, and that should move nice and freely. If it doesn't, if it sticks even a little bit, take it out, sand it some more. We'll try the back one. The back one for me usually sticks the most. So I'm going to put that in the back with the B. That one feels actually really good. The front one here feels a little more sticky than I'd like, so what I'm going to do is actually sand this edge here. Bring it over here, face down. Sand that away, just like that. Not too much. Put this back in. And just like that, perfectly smooth. Awesome. Okay, so last bit. This is the wheel lock like I talked about. Now you can see on the top of that there's that little tuft that looks like a hair. That is the nipple that we need to cut off and make sure that surface is flat. So I'm just going to take my blade and I'm going to cut that off. Give it a little sand real quick. Voila. And then, as you can see, she is nice and smooth. Okay, now what you want to do with that is just make sure it fits into this channel here and slides freely. You can see there, that slides beautifully, so that is perfect. Good to go. Just like this. Cool. Alright, that's the wheel lock done. Last things is, again, check the locks. Now for me, they're a little bit rough if you look closely on here. Get this focus. You can see they're a little bit rough on the edge where they go into the hole. So I'm going to make sure I sand these nicely. Just a sweeping motion along the back like this. There we go. And the other piece. There we go. Other than that, they look pretty good. So the way we test these is put the back one in like that. You can see that can wiggle around nice and easily in here. It moves freely. Perfect. Test out the front one. Should fit into the hole, no problem. And again, we can see that that can move nice and easily. Alright, lock's done. Then all we have is your ring. Obviously, if there's any bits on here, you can see there's a little bit there. Pretty self-explanatory, just clean it off. Sand it if you need to. And then our wheel. The only thing with the wheel is you need to make sure it fits really easily into this hole here. If you have to force this into this hole, then it is not correct and you need to sand it. So you can see mine actually gets stuck there like that. So I need to go ahead and sand around this so that it fits nicely into the top case. So I'm going to go ahead and do that over here. Now remember, don't make any flat spots on this. Make sure you do sweeping motions with the sanding. Alright. Alright, let's give it another try. Oh yeah, see how that just fits right through? Perfect. Spins nicely in there. Absolutely no problem. So this one's good to go. Then we take our top piece here, make sure it fits in that hole and can spin freely. So this one is a little bit tight, but I think it should be okay. So that should fit in there. If it is a little bit tight, what I'll do is either take my file and just go around the inside like this, or use a piece of sandpaper in your finger and do the exact same thing, okay? And now you can see that fits nicely and can spin. Perfect. Alright, so that is how you make sure all your parts are good to go. Next up, we're going to get onto actually assembling this thing. Okay, so first off, we are going to build the main base piece. For this, I'm going to take 3 of these elastic bands. 2 of them are just to help us hold it together. 1 of them is actually for the locks. That's the number 14s. And we're going to need 1 of these size 8 rubber bands. 1, okay? Alright, so what we do first is we're going to put the blade in. That is the first thing. Put in your blade. Make sure it's nice and smooth like that. Then what you want to do is take your back kicker. It should have the B on it as we talked about before, because this is the Mark 11. Take our size 8 rubber band. We're going to put it over the back catch, loop it into a figure of 8, and then loop it back over the catch so that it looks like this. So it's doubled. And then what we need to do is put the front one through that hole on the other side. do this here. Alright, so you can see now they're attached. And see how the band is not twisted? That is very important. I don't know if you guys focus on that. The band is not twisted over itself. You can see that's nice and tight. So then what we want to do is put this in, front being at the front, back being at the back. Make sure the elastic is tight when you put it in so that it does not come off. And now that is in, make sure the back kicker is latched onto the back of the blade as well. Okay, so you can see now we're all good, ready to go. Give it a pull a few times just to make sure those elastics are seated properly. If this feels harder than normal to pull, then it probably means your elastics are wrapped over each other and they're going to be causing too much friction against the wall in that channel. Then what we want to do is take our two kickers, and just as you can probably tell, we're going to put the elastic over the pin in the hole. So I'm going to do that now. Just put it over, press it in, give the elastic a little pull, and it should set itself in there not too badly. And just like that, it's set in. There we go. Just like that. Beautiful. Alright, and then we're going to loop on the front one, which is the shorter, smaller one with the hole in the bottom. Going to loop the elastic over that and then pull it through. That way, what we should have looks like this, as you can see. Okay, small one at the front, long one at the back. Go ahead and put them in. Then with one hand, put a finger on top of both, like so, keeping them in, otherwise they'll fly out. Push the elastic into the channel here, and then they look like this. There we go. Should look like that. Okay. Alright, so next thing, put your hand back over this. Sorry, I am right-handed, so it's easier for me to do with my left. Alright, if you can see in the back here with that back lock, we want to swivel it out so that it is locked in onto the blade. Okay, and we're going to take our slider, push it in at a 45-degree angle so that the front of the slider latches onto the front kicker. Remember, the arrow on the slider should face towards the front. Put it in like so, and then push in the back. And then just like that, we have set the hidden blade. So now it should be ready to have the lid put on. Now the easiest way to put the lid on is to slide across the back first over the back kicker until the hole lines up. And then it clicks in. See, the hole of the kicker is now through the lid. I mean, the hole of the lock is now through the lid. Then we just rotate over the front and push it on until the front lock goes into that hole. Alright, be very careful not to lift the lid up because it will explode. Take an elastic band, wrap it over 3 times like so, and do the same to the back as well. This is just so we can test it, make sure everything works. Okay, so there is the main mechanism of the hidden blade, all equipped. You can see the arrow is facing the front, everything looks correct. The locks are in their holes here at the front and the back, and on the bottom the lock is lined up with each hole as well. So then what we can do is just test it out, make sure it works, put a hand over the top just to be sure that the case is not going to let the locks come up. Just use your fingernail and push that slider forwards like so, and hopefully if we've done everything right, once we get this slot to the front, the blade should shoot out. So let's give that a shot. Oh. Alright, I think I was pressing on the slider there that time. I'll give the retraction a shot. Alright, that's good. Let's give this another crack. There we go. Alright, so that's locked in place. Good. Good, there we go. So you can see it works very nice. Perfect. Perfect, so that's all good. Hidden blade works. Now we can put this aside and we're going to go onto the wheel mechanism here. Okay, so next up we're going to be building the wheel assembly. So before I go ahead and show you how to put it together, I'm going to just show you what we're trying to achieve so that you can better understand how the mechanics work. So it will end up looking like this once it's all together. And basically what's going to happen is when you pull the string, the wheel will turn 180 degrees like that. And you can see on the underside how this works. Okay, now to further show how this works, I've got a fully skeletonized version that I can show you. And this is what we're going to be aiming for to build. So you can see as I pull the string, it turns 180 and then resets, and this little lock tab locks into the wheel. So that's what we're going to be building right now. Alright, so the first step that we need to do is glue the wheel assembly together. So we're going to need our super glue like this, and we're going to basically lather up the bottom piece with the 2 pins. Now be very careful not to get this on the actual pieces where the string goes. Just put it on this circle piece here, like that. It's a good idea to put some on the pins as well. Just make sure the bond's nice and strong. Alright, that should be enough. Then what we're going to do is get our top piece here, and we're simply going to press that on to the top like that. Make sure that's pushed down nice and tight. If you have like a little clamp, like one of these, I would suggest just chucking that on there and waiting about 30 seconds to a minute until that glue is set nice and strong. Okay, so while we're waiting for this to set, we can go ahead and cut the length of our string. So it's going to be this piece here. Alright, now you want a decent length of the string so that when you size where you want the ring to sit, you have plenty of room to play with. That way it's not too short, not too long. So I'm going to make mine about the length of this cutting mat here, which I believe is about 40 centimeters or so. So I'm going to go with that. I reckon that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and cut the string right here. There we go. So that is our length of string. Okay, now the next step, what you want to do with the string is to make a loop on one end. Just a small loop, just enough to put one of the elastic bands through. Now, like I said before, you can use these if you want to, which is what I'm going to use. Otherwise, literally just make a loop and tie it as a knot. Okay, you don't need to use these, but you can just tie it if you want to. Just for ease of use, I'm going to use these just because they make it a lot easier for me. Alright, so what we want to do is go ahead and thread the string through one side. Okay, so once it's pulled through like that, I'm going to loop it back around and put it back into the crimp. Alright, so once it's through, we're going to turn it back around, loop it through, push it back into the crimp. Exactly like this. So you you can see it's looped through. Then we're literally going to grab this with the pliers, like so. I'll zoom you in so you get a good look at this. Alright. I'm going to pull it. So it's just a small loop because that's all we need. Alright, so a loop about that size looks just fine. Then we can go ahead and crimp it with the pliers. So you just press it together like so. And then just like that, we have the loop. We can go ahead and cut off the excess because we don't need that. So, alright, and that is our little loop there. Okay, next we want to grab one of our size 8 rubber bands, these small ones here. And what we're going to do is grab a loop like that. We're going to thread it through our loop on the string, and then we are going to pull it through like so and pull it like this. So then you should have this. Nice and easy. There we go. Alright, so that's pretty much most of the string setup. Now, what we're going to have to do is take our wheel assembly here. We're going to take our wheel, and what you want to do before you think about gluing your design cover onto the wheel, we need to make sure we have our little wheel lock in place first. Okay, so what I'm going to do is grab our spring, which is here, and grab one of these springs. I got an open bag ready. Yep. Okay, so we're going to take one of our springs. Be very careful not to lose these. Like so. Alright, we're going to get our spring. We're going to push it in to the wheel lock. We're going to take it, put it in here. Just like that. There we go. Then take our wheel assembly and slide it in. Now there should be a nice spring-loaded lock here. You can see that moves nicely. Make sure the spring is in the hole at the back. Alright, so let that sit there for a second while we take our wheel component. We're going to take our set screw. Now remember, if you don't have a set screw, like I said before, you can just cut a 4mm piece off of the threaded section of one of your M3 bolts, and you can just screw it into this hole using a pair of pliers. Okay. But for me, I'm going to take out a set screw like so, and we need our Allen wrench here. I'm going to take the set screw and I'm going to put it onto the this hex screwdriver, like so. So now you can see that's on there. Okay. Alright, and just to make sure this threads in nicely, I'm going to go ahead and just widen that hole a little bit with the scalpel. There we go. Alright, and then we want to go ahead and screw our grub screw into that hole. So make sure you apply a bit of pressure to get it in there. Eventually it'll work its way in. Just keep at it. There we go, I can feel it biting now. Okay. Now don't over screw it because you will crack the plastic. So for me, I think about there is fine. So now you can see our little grub screw is screwed in. If you want, just to be safe, you can go ahead and put a bit of super glue on there just to make sure it's not going to move around. But I think that'll do for now. I just want to check quickly if you have a spare slider. You want to put the screw in, and the screw shouldn't stick out the back. So you see when I take the wheel and I push the screw through the slot, it doesn't stick out past here. It's nice and flush, so it doesn't stick out. That's how you know you've got the correct depth on that wheel. Okay, so now what we can do is go ahead and take our wheel assembly here. I'm going to put it in, push in your wheel lock, put it in like that, and then just give it a spin just to make sure it actually works. So you can see I can spin this, and when we come around, bam, the lock engages like that. Okay. Okay. Boom. Alright, so that works perfectly. So then keeping it in the back position, make sure the pin is towards the back. This is so we can get the correct orientation of the design logo. We're going to flip the whole thing over. Make sure this is all pressed in properly, like so. Alright, flip it over. Make sure nothing pops out. Then what we want to do is find the edge of the design logo that matches the flat edge with the flat edge of the logo. So you can see if we follow this edge of the square, it goes off to this curved surface. If we follow this edge of the square, it goes off to this other curved edge. And if we follow this one, it goes off to another curved edge. This one is the one we want, where it's flat here and it faces the peak of this piece here. And we want to face that to the back. So that way, whichever way the pin faces, this edge will always line up with the pin. So when the blade comes out, it should look like that. And when the blade comes in, it should look like that. Okay, this is just preference, otherwise it will never look like symmetrical, if that makes sense. So you can see in this one here, it's facing the back because the blade's retracted. And then when the blade's out, it faces the front. Okay, so then real easy, what we can do is just take our super glue again and put some in the hole, the square hole. Nice and easy. Don't overdo it because you don't want it to like squish out and go onto the edge here and risk it sticking up the wheel. And then we're just gonna take that and stick that in here. Cool. Alright, then again take your little clamp, stick it on, and just wait for that glue to set. Okay, so once the glue is set, we can go ahead and test this out. Give it a spin. I'm going to grab here. See, this edge lines up with the pin, so boom, locks, locks, locks perfectly. Alright, now just to make it a little bit smoother, I'm going to take our lubricant and I'm going to just put like a drop or two into the mechanism, and that way just give it a few spins. Should smooth it out a little bit, make it a little bit nicer. There we go, just give it a few spins. There you go, that feels a lot nicer. Okay, so now we can move on to stringing up the hidden blade. So what we're going to do now is take our elastic. If you have a pair of tweezers, I'd grab them as well, make it a little bit easier. So we're going to grab our elastic here. I'm going to pinch it and put it over the piece of plastic inside the channel, like so. Alright, so now you can see the elastic is linked up there. Now this is where it can get a little bit finicky, so I'm going to zoom you in a little bit. If you look here, I might actually be able to light this up for you. You can see right there, there is an edge. That's where the string is going to catch and effectively turn the wheel, like that. So what we need to do is when we tie our knot, we need to make sure that the elastic is under tension, and we need to make sure the knot is just before that edge right there. Okay, just before that edge. So somewhere around here where I'm pinching that right now is probably a good idea to have it. That way it can tug all the way around. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and tie that knot now. I'm going to try to do this the best I can. So I'm going to pinch where I want the knot. So you see I'll pull it under tension a little bit. Then I'll pinch here because that's where I want the nut to be. I'm going to go ahead and tie my knot now and try and get that as close to where I'm pinching as possible. Don't over tighten it, because if you don't have it in the right spot, then it's going to be a hard time. Alright, so that looks pretty good. So I'm going to just go ahead and tighten that up now. So once you're happy with where you've got it, tighten it up. So now you can see, if I put this under tension and put the string into the slot there, you can see that's in the slot. Now when it's under tension, it's going to catch that, and it's going to want to rotate the wheel like that. Okay, so super easy. Now that that bit is done, this is where I like to use another crimp. So if you have one, go ahead and use the crimp, because this makes it a lot easier for us to adjust where the string is going to sit. So if you have one of these, use it. If you don't, it's okay. You can just tie a knot. It's just probably going to be a little bit harder to get it right off the bat. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is put the crimp over the string, like so. So you can see the crimp is on the string now. I'm going to tighten it just a little bit with the pliers, not too much that it can't move, but just a little bit so that there's a little bit of friction there. Do it a little bit more. Alright, yep, that's good. Then all we need to do is put that through, put the crimp in the channel, run the string through the channel here, and then what I can do is pull this till it gets to the point where I want it. Very carefully, slowly. Right about there. Alright. String resets, give that a test. Just gotta be careful with this so I don't mess up the position. Okay, I think that's about correct. Yep. I'm just gonna pull out a little bit more. There we go. Alright, I'm happy with that. So now I can go ahead and tighten up the crimp completely. I'm going to squish it into like a square shape so that it doesn't catch in the channel. There we go. Alright, so that looks good to me. So now we can go ahead and test this out. So again, put your string into the channel on the wheel, like so. Once that's in there, run your catch through here. Alright, and then give her a test. So I'm going to grab the string, pull it. So it should spin 180 degrees every time. And reset itself. Perfect. So you can see I've probably tied it a little bit too far out because it does over rotate just a touch. But it's nothing like that's going to stop it from working. So I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, now that our wheel assembly is done, you want to go ahead and make sure the pin is at the back of the wheel. So I'm going to pull this one more time. Alright, now you can see that the pin is at the back there, which is perfect. Then what we want to do is bring it over to our hidden blade. And we are going to put it face down onto the wheel assembly here. Make sure it fits. That seems to fit quite nicely. I'm just going to give this string a pull just to make sure everything's all G. Alright, now I can feel mine wants to stick a little bit. So chances are what's sticking there is the slider. So what I'm going to do is open this back up and file the inside of that slider so that the screw is nice and easily sitting in there. Alright, so I've gone ahead and opened it up. Now we just want to test two things right now. You should be able to put your wheel case over the wheel assembly like that. It should just lie on. There should be no friction. You shouldn't need to click this in or anything. It should just sit on like that. And then when you pull it, it should spin 180 degrees really nicely, just like that. So that is good. Adjust you a little bit. Okay. Now the next thing we need to test is that the slider fits on the screw without any friction. So I can feel right now when I put this slider over the screw, the pin on the wheel, I can feel there is a little bit of friction in there. So all I'm going to do is take my file, again you can use sandpaper for this, I'm going to sand the inside of that just a little bit so that it's nice and smooth. You want this to be as smooth as possible. If there is any stick, that's going to lead to the overall mechanism not functioning as nicely as it would normally. So then we can go ahead and test that again, see if the screw fits in nicely. Oh yeah, way better. So that's a lot smoother. A little bit of stick near the edges, so I'm just going to file that a little bit more. Again, this might be a problem you have, it might not be. It just depends on how well you've printed this and how well tuned your 3D printer is. Alright, so that's as smooth as I'm going to get it, which is perfect. So we need to just go ahead and put this back together again. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and put this back together. So again, do the locks. Go pop them in. Lock the blade at the back, remember, 45 degrees, slide in the slider, lock it in, take our top case, slide that over, boom, lock in the front, there we go. Now if you've seen how fast I did that, don't expect to be able to do it that quickly. I've done this hundreds and hundreds of times, so yeah, if you can get up to that speed, you're doing a pretty good job. I'm going to go ahead and elastic this back down again to make sure it doesn't fly everywhere. Alright, now that that is all secured back up again, it should all fit, so I'm going to put a little bit of oil now, just on here. This is a good way to just keep everything running smooth. Put a little bit on the wheel too, that's always a good idea, especially on the pin. Make sure you put some oil on the pin. Alright, now we can go ahead and actually start to assemble this thing. So I'm going to take the elastic off the front, being very careful not to let this lid lift up, because if it does, the whole thing's going to come undone. I'm going to take the elastic off, like so. Take our wheel assembly, keeping pressure down on the lid the whole time, and I'm going to slot it in the back, like from the front to the back. That way that pin will guide itself into the channel on the slider, like so. Alright, now everything feels to be in place there, which is really good. I'm not going to pull the string yet because we want to screw it down at least in 2 spots. So take your screws. I'm going to put in one here at the front and one here closer to the wheel. So you're going to need a screwdriver, obviously. I'm going to use an electric one just to speed up the process. Okay, so I have this one. Alright, so if your screw doesn't want to go in straight away, just widen up the hole a little bit with a scalpel, like that. Alright, line it up, screw her in. Now it's very important you don't over tighten these because you can split the plastic layers. So again, this is 3D printed still, so do not over tighten anything. Alright, so now we can go ahead and give this a test. So I'm just going to wrap my finger around the string because we haven't put the ring on yet. And you can see that actually works really well. So if you're happy with everything, everything works mechanically sound, then you are awesome. You can go ahead and screw everything else in. And we can move on to the next part, which is putting on the ring. If it's not working, 9 times out of 10, this is going to be some issue with you not cleaning the parts properly, or you've not printed them very well. So if your printer is poor quality and the parts come out not the correct size, that's going to give you a lot of troubles. Mechanisms like these are really, really finicky, and they're really, really sensitive to change. So if you don't have everything printed to the T, chances are it's probably not going to work. As you can see, I've downpacked my printing skills. All my projects come out really, really well, even with things like my axe and all that kind of stuff. Everything has to work. So these files are perfect. I have designed them so that I've left room for error with printing. Most parts have like a little tolerance that, you know, will still work, and I've left room for that. But if there is any, you know, nipples that you haven't removed, cut off, if there's any stringing between parts that you haven't taken off, if you haven't sanded any edges that are bulging, anything like that, that will all stop this from working, or it will make it not very smooth, and you might have to really jerk on the string, but it should be smooth as butter. Like you can see with this one I have here, how effortless this string pull. Like it works so well, and I guarantee you, if you have done everything correctly, it will be that smooth. So make sure you take your time with it. This is not a project you need to rush. Take your time, make sure everything's printed quality. If you're not happy with the part, or if something's warped, do it again. It is not worth just, you know, trying to cut corners with this kind of thing. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put in the rest of the screws, then we can go ahead and put on the ring. Okay, let's get to it. Alright, so once you've got everything screwed together, go ahead and just give this another test. Alright, as you can see, mine works beautifully. It does over-rotate a little bit, but that's my fault because I put the nut on the string a little too close, so it pulls out a little bit more, but it still works so nicely. It's very, very smooth. So, really happy with that. Now what we do is just clean up the workspace a little bit, and then we can get onto the ring. Okay, so next thing, gonna grab your ring. Make sure with your ring you put the string through the small hole side. So if I show you on the ring, there is a small hole side and there is a big hole side. Put the string through the small hole and then tie a knot on the other side so that the knot can actually sit into the big hole, and that way it's not going to stick into your finger. So we're going to go ahead and size this up. Alright, so we're going to put it through the small hole, like that. It's going to thread through. Now, in my experience, I believe around 7 centimeters is usually like a good spot to have it, especially if you have a riser. So I'm going to go ahead and tie it at a 7, and we're going to see how that feels. Instead of tying it, I'm actually going to use another crimp just so I can adjust it if I want to later on down the line. So I'm going to go ahead and put this crimp on here and pull this through till we get to 7 centimeters, which seems to be about there. Alright, looks good to me. Okay, might be a little long, we'll see. Yep, so for me around 7 centimeters is good. I'd say probably I'm a little bit bigger than an average person, so I would say probably about 6 centimeters for most people, but 7 seems to work fine for me. So I'm going to go ahead and crimp that properly now. And all you get to do is just cut off the excess of the string. Now, if you're a little bit cautious and you're not really sure if that's the length you want forever, leave like an extra 1 centimeter or so, but I'm pretty confident with that length, so I'm going to cut it right there. Alright, now in regards to strapping, you can pretty much use anything you want that can hold it to your arm. I myself use a Velcro strap. This is called double-sided hook and loop, I think that's the name. So obviously we have a shorter strap for the front of the arm and a longer one for the back of the arm. This is the loop on one side and the hook on the other, and it like sticks to itself. So I believe this is 25 mil in width. So if you want to get the same strapping as me, go 25 mil width of Velcro hook and loop, and this is the one you can get, and then you just cut it to the size that you want. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and thread this through, but obviously you can use anything that you want to. Thread it through the back like that, and we'll do the back one. There we go. Then go ahead and lie it down. Now I would recommend wearing a sleeve. If you don't have a sleeve, I might do a limited run of these sliders if I can get, the riser, sorry, if I can get my filament working, because I kind of left the filament out and it's not really that good anymore. But yeah, I might do a run of these. If you don't have a sleeve, I would recommend putting something underneath there. It just makes it a lot easier to use. But yeah, you can use a riser as well, which is what I designed them for. I'm going to go ahead and strap this on. You should thread the Velcro through there, by the way. I'm just being lazy and not doing it. And stick that onto your arm. There we go. Alright. That's going to do it for today's video. So if you enjoyed, please like, comment and subscribe. And again, if you want to grab your very own files, be sure to check out my shop link on Cults 3D, and you can make one of these yourself. Again, really, really awesome. Defeats gravity in every direction. Definitely one of the best hidden blades out there in my opinion, and definitely looks really, really cool too. So yeah, also this is recorded on a new mic, this specific clip, not the whole video. So if you made it this far, let me know how the mic sounds. And yeah guys, I'll see you in the next video. Take care.